Hello, hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so
Hello.
glad. Hey, hey, hey. And
Hello.
hello, everybody out there. I wish I could see everybody out there, but thank you for joining us. We are really glad you could join us for our November, December, January, February, our fourth of five shows for the Digital Creation Swap.
Woo.
Manitoba connects, showcases, MAN, which is Manitoba Arts Network, showcases, promotes, and connects visual arts and performers across communities in Manitoba. I will now read the land acknowledgement. The Manitoba Arts Network and our members live and work on Treaty 1, 2, 3, and 5 territories. We acknowledge and appreciate the past, present, and future generations of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, Dene peoples, and the Métis Nation, as well as the Inuit people who have a strong community here in Manitoba. I'd like to just explain, in case there's anybody new in the audience tonight, how this process works, how we land here with you tonight. So each of these beautiful artists in front of you, who I promise to introduce shortly, has been sent three pieces, three artworks, and three songs, and exchanged them. So the visual artist will have given the other artist her pieces, and the musician will have given the visual artist her pieces. So that was really confusing for a very simple statement. They are to observe each other's art and potentially choose one of those pieces particularly to be inspired from, although potentially the entire body of work. And from that inspiration, from that piece, they are to create a brand new piece. So tonight they will be revealing to each other for the first time, right guys? Have you seen each other's works?
Not the video.
No? Cool. So they'll be revealing to each other the videos which they've created, to show you the process of creating this new piece of art and or the result. So that's a really maybe my weakest of the four descriptions of what this is, but I think you get it. I hope you get it. Here I go. Let's get to these beautiful artists. We would like to thank Canada Council for the Arts for funding this series of 5 creation swaps. It's been really, really cool to watch, so thank you so much to Canada Council. So I would like to move to introduce the artists. First, Grace Hrabi. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah? She's a singer-songwriter and teacher with a degree in vocal jazz performance for the University of Manitoba. She's an independent, self-booking artist who performs in Winnipeg and tours across Canada with the folk trio. Ooh, I didn't check this. Casati?
Yeah.
Casati, cool. The trio has recorded, produced, and self-released 3 full-length albums since 2014. Awesome. Grace teaches voice, ukulele, and songwriting through the Winnipeg Conservatory of Music. Fabulous. Very great. And next I'd like to introduce Rosemary Dzus, who holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I did say yours right. Yes, Rosemary?
No.
Oh
No,
no!
it's it's Zeus.
Wow, that is not at all that close. Not at all close. So just like Zeus, as though there were no D.
Yes, as though there were no
Ah,
D.
I am so sorry. That
That's
is
okay.
very simple correction. I
It's a
apologize.
it's pretty common
Well, of
mistake to
course it
make.
is, but I could have been on top of that. Well, let me go on and introduce you, Rosemary, who holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Manitoba and a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Studies from the University of Winnipeg. Ooh, how vast and different things. While studying fine arts, she majored in photography and subsequently pursued photography in commercial and industrial settings and in art practice. Currently, she works in paint, pencil, and pen and ink. She's exploring bookmaking, frottage. Is that how you say that?
Portage, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And video. Okay, tonight is a learning journey. Okay, so I've now introduced you formally with your bios. Grace, is there anything you'd like to update us on that you are working on or that has popped up over the last strange year that you would like to share with us?
Um, I haven't really been doing very much other than teaching the last little while. I've been doing my regular teaching and teaching a group ukulele workshop through Home Roots. And
Cool.
yeah, just over the summer, had a couple of performances, but the winter is hard because you can't do anything outside. And so,
Mm.
looking forward to warmer weather and happy to be here doing this.
Yeah, well, welcome. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing your ukulele prowess. We'll see that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And what about you, Rosemary? Is there anything above and beyond your bio or of recent or current times that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I'm doing a bit more collage these days. So the frottage uh, technique that you referred to, that's basically just rubbings. So I've been going out and when it was warmer, like in the summer and the fall, I was taking paper and getting rubbings off tree bark, and I'm using those patterns to create collage pieces.
So just to be clear, you're holding, for example, a paper on the bark of a tree and using a
Yeah,
pencil to capture. I got it. Cool.
yeah.
I love
I have had to um, do some experimenting to find out something that works. I find that if I wet the paper down and I use things like Conte crayon and pastel instead of pencil, it works a lot better to capture the texture of the tree bark.
Yeah, I think that's really a neat thing to see someone else's art and the experimentation they do to arrive. I know I'm sure I'm speaking for many of us listening. We don't even think about that kind of experimentation that would be involved in arriving at a technique that the artist is excited about. So thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that with us.
you're
I
welcome.
think we're going to start with your video, Rosemary. Does that sound good?
That's fine. It's
Great.
not the
Off we
first time
go
I've
then.
seen it, but that's okay.
Oh, well, it's the first time we've seen it and we can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm as sad as a lonesome child with a river inside running wild. The tears start to fall, they rush from my soul, and slowly I remember how to smile when my days get dark. They're black as tar and just as tough to get through. But no matter how slow, on I must go, just hoping for something better to do. When clouds fill the sky, there's nothing that I can do to change this grayscale day. But with rose-colored hues over these baby blues, well, maybe it will all be okay. me from one side to the other side. I'm as sad as a lonesome child.
Woo! Oh, I think you're muted, Jen.
I was just making sure you were paying attention. Thank you. Thank you. Bravo, bravo, bravo. So I
Thank
think
you.
I'd like to ask, yeah, bravo. I'd like to ask you both a couple questions about what we just heard and saw. First, Rosemary, when you chose and heard and chose the song you heard and chose, what inspired you particularly? How did you move from those lyrics or those melodies, the sound of it, into this scape that we saw?
Well, if the first time I heard the song, I thought it was kind of a melancholy, sad song. But then when I kept listening to it, I realized it wasn't really that. It was more like somebody coming through a very difficult time in their lives, and now they're kind of floating along and letting going with the flow, seeing where the river of life takes them. So,
How does that resonate with what you intended? Not that there's anything wrong if had you interpreted it differently, but does that align with what you wrote, your intent?
Yeah, it's interesting. I like that you kind of thought it was sad at the beginning, and then kind of like the message when I was writing it is like it's okay to feel sad, and like that you have to kind of go through your emotions to get to the other side. So to kind of see those tears and all of that feeling as just something you have to go through to get to something better. And so I know when I saw the piece, not the video ahead of time, but when I first saw it, I thought you really captured like the melancholy and the it's gonna be okay vibe really nicely.
Oh, that's really cool. So hearing Grace talk about that, is that kind of bang on how you felt when you listened?
yeah, I think so. I think that captures it. And of course, I've got the kind of the rapids and things like that, and the dark kind of the nighttime sky, and then moving into something a little bit more relaxed, less fraught, I would say.
I
Oh,
I
yeah.
like as I was listening to the song and I heard her say the word blue, I always find that so um um it's just so refreshing. It feels so connected to be staring at this beautiful blue scape and hear the artist sing the word blue, and you can feel the connection. It's a very full circle. It's very full circle to see your image and to hear her sing that word. Were you inspired by the fact that she sang the word blue? Or is that not even how you landed there at all?
I No, I wasn't thinking about
No.
I wasn't
I
thinking about the
love that
word
even
blue.
more. I love that
Really,
even
no.
more. That's super, super cool. Well,
I
why don't we
remember
go?
hearing the word rose tinted, and I wanted to get some kind of rose tones into the painting. So I tried to do
Love
that.
that. Love that. Well, I think we will go check out Grace's video and then we'll have kind of a brief discussion like we did. And then I'd love to get into the techniques that perhaps you used in creating your art, and we'll talk about some songwriting with Grace. But let's check out Grace's video now. What do you say?
Cool.
Sounds good.
My cold branches have grown bare. Yesterday they seemed to bloom without care. The winter shook me, my heart would ache. With every gust of wind I thought I would break. Oh, I thought I might break. The moon throws shadows across the snow. How many nights like this I've seen, I don't know. But the nights are getting shorter. In the day the sun is hot. There's something deep inside of me that I can't stop. And know what colors we'll see when tomorrow brings a chance for us to be free as a breeze. Let it be a wild, wild spring. A few more dark days will go by, but I can feel my branches reaching for the sky. As life returns, the lesson that remains is we're carried through these seasons by the winds of change. And know what colors we'll see when tomorrow brings a chance for us to be free as a breeze. Let it be a wild, wild spring.
That was great.
Oh,
So
I'm so glad you like it.
Was that your first time hearing it?
Yes. I hadn't heard of it.
Oh, so okay. So what do you think in hearing her lyric and her melody when you know the piece she chose?
I think it's just let me think about that for a couple of seconds. It certainly captures the intensity of what I felt when I was out that day and taking the pictures of the trees, because it was an incredibly windy day. And there's our huge willow trees around where I live, and they were really moving. So, and I was thinking about it, the COVID lockdown had started maybe a month before that, and there was some sense in me that this event was going to bring a lot of changes, and somehow the wind in the trees and that intense moving really spoke to me in that way. But I did also, I was also thinking about the intensity of the colors in the spring. So there's that combination of very intense weather and bright spring colors and really not knowing what's going to happen next. So yes, I think the song really fits very well with the piece.
Very cool. Grace, I assume it's called Wild Wild Spring?
Yeah. And that's the name of Rosemary's piece.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you observed the piece, I perhaps should have asked you maybe first, but when you observed the piece, what did you pull out of it that motivated you? It sounds like the title topically the title motivated you a little bit, but what was in the visual? What captured you? Where did you go?
Yeah, for me, I think when I saw the pieces that Rosemary sent me, this one right away, I kind of had a response to, and I feel like I probably had a response to it because I was looking at it in the middle of winter. So I felt right away like the intensity of the color and just that feeling that you get in the spring, how everything is so bright because we haven't been looking at like any color all winter. Those first little buds on the trees and things, they look like so vibrant. And I love that about the picture right away. And And so I don't know, I just felt very kind of pulled towards all the color in it. And I felt like it was something to look forward to.
Oh my gosh. Beautiful. I'm gonna sound a bit daft for a second. Was the piece a photo?
No, you mean
No, I was gonna say I thought it was a paint. I assumed a painting. Tell us what the medium of that piece was.
It's the medium is acrylic paint and collage, the kind of frottage material that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I was using the rubbings from the tree bark for the branches. I would just cut out the pieces of the rubbings and paste them on for the branches. And
So
I
when you
wanted
spoke
to
of,
I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to create the effect of a real vibrancy with the colors so that you can almost see it moving in a way because it was such a windy day.
There is so much motion in it, so much clearly. Yeah. So when you spoke of the photo, did you take a photo and be inspired by that photo for the piece? Is that
Yes.
what you meant when you?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Cool. There is a lot of motion in it. Can we see that piece again easily? Can any of you or anybody behind the scenes show us that piece again? Nope. None of the above. Maybe. Wait, look at the voice of God is coming.
Oh, it's right at the end.
My cold branches have grown bare. Yesterday
Hey. She's coming through for us, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And great video. Great video, Grace.
Oh, thank
Really,
you.
Yeah, I
really
love
beautifully
that.
put together.
The layering there.
Oh yeah. It's neat to see
Yeah,
the
there it
piece.
is.
Hey. Yeah, the motion is very visceral. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. So since we have this piece up anyway, Rosemary, so the bark is where you've used the technique you called frottage, where you've placed a paper over top of a texture?
Yes. So I took rubbings from trees, not necessarily these trees, not necessarily the trees that I'm painting, but from trees. And then I used parts of those large sheets of rubbings. I would cut pieces out of that to make the branches in a collage as a collage technique.
Very cool. This is a beautiful piece. Well, Grace, why don't you tell us a little bit about about the lyrics of the song you created, and maybe that could segue into your lyric writing process in general, your songwriting process in general. But first, tell us about the lyrics of the song and yeah, anything you might want to share.
Yeah. So, well, once I had picked this piece out, I wanted to just kind of sit with it for a little while. And so I ended up printing it off and framing it and just putting it beside my piano. So for like a couple of days before I actually sat down to write anything, it was just like right there. It's still there. And just, it was like a way for me to kind of get inspired without putting too much pressure on myself, because the idea of writing something with a deadline to be very specifically inspired by something, I didn't want that to kind of come into the writing too much. So I wanted to make sure that I let it still feel pretty organic as it was happening. And so, yeah, I think having the picture is hanging right beside a window that looks onto the river, which is obviously just all winter and bare trees. And so I feel like every time I would look over there and see like this outside and this beside it, it really started to give me so much kind of hope for things to come. And so what I kind of decided was that I wanted to incorporate like the quarantine and COVID and everything into the season, which is so interesting to me that you brought that up, that you kind of took this at the beginning, because my writing, like especially in the last verse where I'm like, there's still going to be some dark days, but like we're going to get through this and like let's not forget what we went through to get here. I felt like it was such an interesting writing process to kind of just be writing from the perspective of the tree.
Oh, is that how you kind of came at it?
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was just kind of thinking like, okay, like what are the things that you would see if you were just outside and watching the seasons go by, and like time would seem like it was going so slowly. And so I incorporated that kind of like, how many days like this have I seen? I just don't know. But the nights are getting shorter, and it's like, that's things like if you didn't have any kind of a concept of time, those are the things you maybe would notice. So that was kind of the perspective that I chose to write from.
I love that. If I read the lyric, would it be very clear to me that you were writing from the perspective of the tree? Because to me, it just sounded like, maybe I'm romanticizing it, but it still sounded like how a person could feel too.
Yeah. And I mean, I wanted you to be able to see it both ways, but I'll just read you a little bit of the lyrics, and that'll, like, in the first verse, I say, my cold branches have grown bare. Yesterday, they seemed to bloom without care. So kind of saying like all these things I kind of took for granted are gone now.
That still felt very human to me. I love this. Go on.
The winter shook me. My heart would ached. With every gust of wind, I thought that I would break. So it's like, I actually looked up the anatomy of a tree because I wanted to include some actual, like, if I was a tree, like what would I know? And so the heartwood is like the very center of the tree, which is actually like not living anymore from what I understood, but it's like the center, the core of the tree is the heartwood.
As a songwriter, when you looked up tree words and you came across heartwood, did you die?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was just like, okay, well, I have to work that in. But honestly, like it came really organically into that verse because I wanted to talk about that feeling of like how many times throughout everything we've kind of felt like maybe we're not going to make it through this, like that kind of hopelessness. So that's the first verse. And then the second verse is the moon throws shadows across the snow. How many nights like this I've seen, I don't know. But the days are getting shorter. In the days the sun is hot. There's something deep inside of me that I can't stop. So just that feeling of hope. Like, and just coming back to life and like feeling like you can see a light, right? And then the chorus is, oh, what colors we'll see when tomorrow brings a chance for us to be free as the breeze. Let it be a wild, wild spring.
Oh, yeah. That's so parallel to the year, to the COVID, to the thing, but to the weather, to the tree. That's so beautiful allegory, beautiful metaphors.
Yeah. And I thought like, when I went to do the photo editing, the video editing, I didn't want to just show the picture because I was writing the whole beginning part from a winter perspective. So I really wanted to only bring the visual of the Wild Wild Spring painting in when I was talking about the actual spring, because I thought otherwise you wouldn't have that kind of like experience that I had when I saw the picture.
Love that. I'm going to segue back to something you just mentioned, and then I'll come back to you, Rosemary, regarding the same thing. As a musician, it depends exactly what direction your career takes and where you focus your energy. But I will say that doing this, and you kind of mentioned this, having a deadline, having a specific inspiration and a specific deadline is not super common unless you particularly work in placements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I found that super jarring, super challenging, super like crazy making in a good, bad way. So I'll let you circle back to that. How did you feel as a musician? I don't know your journey. We've kind of read your bio. You've gone to school. That's lots of deadlines and stuff. But you're now a working musician. So how did you feel about having specific inspiration, specific deadline?
Yeah, I felt, the fact that I got a choice of pieces, so that I had 4 pieces that Rosemary sent me, that made me a little less nervous because I got to pick whichever one I kind of felt a pull towards right away. So I didn't feel like I was just given one piece and it was just like, that's the piece. But I also felt like having a deadline I just had to make sure I carved out a little bit of time over and over again, because I didn't want to have to sit down and be like, I'm going to write the whole thing right away, because well, let me see if I think it's in this book here, but if I show you the writing process, you'll see I definitely wrote a lot of things that I ended up not using. And then I, circled back to other things, and I was all over the place. So I think when you have a deadline, you want to be able to still have that ability to try things. And then if they don't feel right, but if they don't feel right, you don't want to feel like you have to stick with them. So when I was starting to sit down and write, like the very first part came really, really quickly to me. And then sometimes, like, you're also a songwriter, so like sometimes when things come easily, you start really questioning them. And you're just like, this can't be good. If it was good, it would have been hard. So it's like, as you're kind of going through that, you start to really question things. And I wanted to leave myself enough time that if I sang something and then 2 days later I came back and I sang it again, if it didn't still feel right, that I would have time to just kind of leave it. So what I ended up doing was, the week that I picked the piece, I gave myself like a deadline just to sit down and start. So I didn't have to get any of it finished. I just had to sit down and start writing an idea. And in that first day, I came up with like the first 2 verses and a chorus, but that didn't end up being the chorus. So like, this is like some of my writing for this. So you see, like,
there you have it, folks.
Crossed out, and there's other notes on here from other stuff, but it's just like,
there's 12 different pen colors. That's songwriting.
Yeah, it's a mess. And like there, the whole last verse, when I got there and wrote that, I was just like, I don't like how this ends. And endings are so hard anyway, but an ending on a deadline, it's like, it has to still feel good. So I definitely found having the deadline was it was there in my mind. I knew I had to have it done by a certain time, but I felt like I had given myself enough time that the deadline wasn't really present while I was writing.
Well, listen to your discipline. That is amazing. I looked at the email and briefly viewed the photo several times, and then was scared of it, closed my email rapidly, and then had lunch many days in a row. But good for you. Good for you. Some of us are more organized and disciplined. That's good. Well, Rosemary, how about you? I feel like visual artists are maybe a little bit more used to that kind of deadline. I don't know about the inspiration. Have you ever worked with a audio inspiration before? And how did you feel about the deadline? How did it motivate you? How did you move through that?
I have not worked with audio inspiration before, but because Grace sent me 4 songs, I wasn't too worried. I just thought, I'll just pick whatever one I'm drawn to, and so I did that. And for me, it was basically, I was very disciplined. I was working every day, and as I was always being careful as I was putting the piece together, that what I was doing fit with what I was thinking, how I was thinking the piece would evolve. And I wasn't really sure the techniques or anything that I was going to use at first. It just kind of came in a stepwise manner, adding on. And does that look okay? Yes. Well, we'll keep going, and let's try this. And there was a lot of fiddling around, trying different materials and techniques to see what worked.
Do you realize that you both are describing something very similar? You two are such an interesting match. This is incredible. A lot of the matches in this swap have been really apt in one way or another, but you two have a similar, I'm sure you're very different people, very unique artists, obviously, with 2 different disciplines, but you are interestingly similar in process and thought a little bit.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was going to look like at the end.
That's what.
Some visual artists know, like they see the image in their mind, and they maybe think about it for a long time, and then they just do it. And I'm not like that. It's a process. So one step, another step.
Yeah, Grace literally said, I wanted to leave myself enough time that if I as it came together, if I didn't love the direction, I could still rein it back and try something else, which is very much what you described,
Yes.
leaving yourself
Yeah.
time too to try different pieces.
Yeah.
Well, what an interesting match you both are.
And one of the big things for me was that I had no knowledge or experience of doing video editing at all. And so
Yeah, that's a
that
big
was a
piece
that
of
was
this,
a
isn't it?
pretty big learning curve, and that was an intense few days.
Well,
To
bravo, my friend, because it is really challenging. I mean, I work with computers a lot and it's still kind of icky. So good for you. Your
I
video
thought you
was
did a great
great.
job. Yeah,
Me
knowing
too.
knowing
Thank
that
you.
you didn't have a background in it, it looked really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it turned out
Well,
really well, all things considered. Yes.
not just all things considered, it was great. I'm gonna ask some fabulous audience questions whose name looks suspiciously familiar as an artist who will be starring in next month's show. Thank you for your questions. First, Grace, beautiful musical rendition. Does your vocal jazz influence your use of ukulele in your music? Or how does vocal jazz background influence? Tell us about that.
That's interesting. Well, I think when I'm doing songwriting, I don't really like focus on trying to include that. I think a lot of um, there's some of that in the quality of my voice just from doing vocal jazz. I don't really try to think about adding jazz in. I don't really think about adding any style in when I'm writing something. I just try to follow the song. Like, so if I really wanted to do it on ukulele for some reason, I did consider doing it on piano, and when I do piano I definitely do use more jazz chords. I kind of sat down and played on the piano a little bit. It just wasn't like feeling,
Did it feel too sad?
it just felt too heavy.
Too
Like
heavy,
I
yeah.
really wanted it to have like this motion. And I'm sure other piano players could have achieved that, but not me. So
Not me.
I was like, everything I do on the piano is like boom,
Me too.
heavy. So
Yeah.
it was just like, I don't know, that just didn't feel right. So as I was going through, it just ended up kind of taking a folky turn, and I just went with that. So that, like, I didn't really try and add any jazz in. I think there's elements of that in my singing, no matter what style I do, but I wasn't really trying to include them.
That's really cool. Actually, that was a really great question. Thank you for that question. I kind of forgot that your bio talked about your jazz trio, and the song you did present wasn't, I mean, it wasn't, you're right, it was, I guess, folk. I
Well, I
guess
have like a jazz, like my degree is in jazz, but that's not like I don't write in that style very much anymore.
Don't
Like,
you think
unless something just calls me to that style, then I'll go with it. But if not, I don't sit down and go like, I'm going to write jazz.
I think it's interesting that a thought that if I was not a musician that I might find interesting, because I still find it interesting when I talk to artists, is what they listen to versus what comes out of them. You know, I really do personally like top 40 music, but writing it is kind of attempting to write it is kind of crazy making for me. And if I actually really admire what you just described, which is I follow the song, I follow my inspiration. I think I personally am going to take inspiration from what you've said and really keep working towards my path of not trying to work from a box, work in a box, work from a
Yeah.
box.
I think like, well, my trio, like we started as a jazz trio, like straight up playing jazz, and that was it. And then we started incorporating originals in, and they weren't all jazz. And we felt kind of like, well, maybe they should be jazz. Should we make them all into jazz? And then when we decided not to do that, like every single application that you fill out, it's like, what are
What's
you?
genre?
Like,
Yeah.
like one box, and it's like, well, I can't, so I don't know what you want me to do. So I think like once you're kind of faced with that and you actually don't want to check one box, it frees you a little bit, because then you're not really trying to write from that perspective. Like, oh, I guess my album would be considered this. It's like, well, no, I don't really necessarily think any of my albums are considered any one specific thing.
But I mean, each genre kind of has its own snobbery sometimes. Like, you could argue, like, jazz has its own like, chunk of pretension to it if you want there to be. Pop music, too. Music, too. You know, pop writers, basically, if the music meanders past 1-4-5-4, people are like, pfft. You know, it's so.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, and yeah, it's interesting. Like when I'm teaching, I teach pop music though, if my students want to do that. And often when I'm playing, and they do, yeah. When I'm playing that stuff, I often am like, maybe I'm overthinking my writing. Like maybe I'm making it overcomplicated. But it's like,
but Grace, I challenge you. Good luck writing pop music, which is, as everybody knows, very simple earworms. It's so hard. I personally would like to meander too. That's why I like folk music. I like listening to it. I like writing it. I like storytelling and weaving. Pop, you have like 15 words to say something, and maybe it's not profound, but it's something, and it's hard.
Yeah, I find like every genre, like if you're trying to write in that genre, I think that really affects what you say. And 100%. So I really like, especially with this while I was writing it, I wanted to tell a story. So I just thought, I'm just going to write the story down and I'm going to follow that and see what happens. And like the chords ended up changing because like I wanted the chorus to be really like major and happy because the painting made me feel that way. So yeah, there's certain aspects that you do, like you want to follow that, but I didn't want to force any of it.
Well, I will really take note and take inspiration from that entire piece of our conversation. Thank you. That's a really great, gentle reminder.
Yeah, great.
Rosemary, I'm going to circle back to you. Another great audience/artist question. Rosemary, beautiful work. Does your environmental studies influence your subject matter or approach to your artwork? Which is a great question because it's nature. What Grace chose is nature. I didn't see the rest of the images, so tell us.
I think it does in a way. I'm more aware of the processes that are going on out in the world and what's so-called the natural world. Of course, we're part of the natural world, so. But anyway, the landscapes, where we live, what's outside of us. I know some of the processes that go on, so I think it makes me more aware of that. And
well, can I ask
I do pay attention to it.
Can I just interrupt and ask, what really does an environmental studies degree look like? What are you studying exactly?
Well, it depends on what you, there's different, I mean, my degree is 25 years old at this point, so I think things have probably changed a lot. But when I was going to university, there were different streams you could take. You could take the sciences, where you would take things like limnology and chemistry and those kinds of subjects, and or you could take the arts path instead.
Within environmental studies?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there were different types of degrees that you could get. So there's a lot to pick from.
Okay, so would you say that still remains a passion in your life that does often collide with your art?
It's kind of I would say it's kind of an undercurrent. Yes, it's an undercurrent. I wouldn't say it's a collision, but it does.
Fair.
I think it does. I think it does inspire me at times, and it certainly makes me more attentive to what's going on around me. I wanted to actually say something about what Grace had said about following the song, because that's what I do too. When I start a piece, it starts to communicate with me, and then there's a back and forth thing. Where are you going? piece of artwork, and the artwork tells me where it needs to go, and then I follow along and have a little conversation with it as we go.
I really
So-
got that feeling from your video. Like as you were going through, it kind of seemed, it never didn't seem like it was just like even watching you do the sketch at the beginning was very like, ooh, like, well, maybe this will end up being here and maybe it won't. Like you're just kind of like going through the ideas. And I thought that was a really cool part of the video.
I don't think you actually tried two different hats on, but I feel like you put a hat on and then changed the hat and put the hat back on.
I did. I changed the hat.
You changed the hat.
I did.
Yeah. So totally, you guys are art partners made in heaven. So I'll ask each of you, Grace first, would you do something like this again where you took inspiration from a piece of someone else's art?
I definitely would. I mean, I used to just like go, like if I was traveling, I would just go to the art gallery and walk around with a pad and a paper and pen and just write like all kinds of inspiration down from looking at things like this. But I've never like actually sat and tried to write a piece just based on one piece of art. But I definitely think like there's so like all the arts, like there's so many similar things going on in them. It's easy to kind of look at a piece and almost hear what it sounds like.
Kind of, but could you relate to me saying, I loved it, I would absolutely do it again, but if it was actually presented to me, I would be like horrified, terrified, excited? Because I find it really, I was challenging.
I thought it was challenging, but I feel like
I didn't want to let the artist down.
When I got the email, I felt like yes right away. Like as soon as I saw what it was, my like reaction was just like, yep, right away. Like Sarah could tell you after, like I wrote her back, like I haven't read all of this yet, but like write me down as a yes, and then I'll read through this later.
You know what I want to share with you guys? You're the first of all four teams who neither of you have commented this, and maybe one of you will after I say it, but neither of you have commented, I really didn't want to let the other artist down. I really didn't want to not do justice to their work. I really didn't want to take their story somewhere they didn't want to take it, or some iteration of that. I feel like, unless I'm off, both of you had a little bit more trust for yourself and the other person than the rest of us did. Neither of you seemed concerned that you would, not show up.
I just think like it's after you put it out there, it's totally up for interpretation no matter what. So I think like I've had people after a show come up and be like, that song was about this, and you're like, sure. Like if that's what you got out of that, then that's great. So I feel like asking someone to make a visual, if it's what she felt from the song, then it's correct. And I guess as an artist, I assumed she would feel the same way.
I love that. I love that trust. So Rosemary, would you do this again where you took inspiration from another person's art?
Yes, I would do it again.
Yeah. Did you find it fun, challenging, hard? Bleh?
It was challenging, but I wasn't worried about misinterpreting the music. It was just, I'm making this piece of art in response to this, and whatever happens, happens. And that's my response to the song, and that's just the way it is.
You guys, that's so great. Both of you are so great. So great. Well, do either of you have, and you can not, this, nobody will be insulted. Do either of you have any questions for each other about the process or the piece of artwork or anything?
I did want to say something. When I first saw your piece, the very first thing that came to mind was like, to me, it looks like a frame out of like a stop motion video. And the way that you did the piece, like with all the little pieces coming together, and now that you can video it, that would be a pretty cool thing for you to kind of play around with, because even just the like little movements, like watching you just move it a little bit, like I didn't know that's what your video was going to look like but based on just looking at the piece, I just thought like, oh, you could have even done like a video like of him coming down the water, and then at the end, just like the final spot could have been there.
There was some stop motion vibes now that I think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've like dabbled in some stop motion for fun, and I just feel like right away, just the way that it was put together, it just gave me that feeling right away, and I loved it because I love that like style.
Cool, yeah.
Well, I remember looking at the raw video and wanting to make sure that some of the movements that I was making were included. I mean, some of them weren't very elegant, I can assure you, when I got glue all over my hand. But there were some movements that I really wanted to make sure were in there. So I tried to do the editing to have that all included. But that's a fun idea, actually. And I was sort of thinking about that when I was putting there was the hat, and then there was no hat, and then there was the little canoe and all of that. I was kind of thinking about that kind of thing.
Yeah,
well, that's
cool.
Great, yeah, that's a great, result, if you will, of this conversation. Rosemary, do you have any thoughts, questions, feelings for Grace?
Well, it was great. It was great to hear the music that you wrote. I really liked it a lot. And I think it certainly fits with the piece as far as I'm concerned. And I did get the sense that for me that the tree was singing. That was the tree. I did.
I love that.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. Well, what a great conversation. I'd like to end this evening with the most important question of the night. Rosemary, why did you change the hat?
Why did I change the hat? I had a reason. It was I was using some kind of different material, different paper or something, and I put the hat on.
I thought you were going to tell me some emotional story about how the hat didn't. Okay, go on. You put the hat on.
I put the hat on, and it didn't fit. It just didn't fit with the rest of the painting, and I thought that's not going to work.
Folks.
So I got rid of it.
Fit.
Yeah.
Well, we love how it ended up. You are both beautiful artists. I am really glad to have shared this evening with you. Unless either of you have anything more to say, I think I'm going to wrap our evening up. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Well, thank you both.
One thing I wanted to say was that when I was doing the figure, I wanted to make sure that the figure was not, you couldn't really be identified as any particular
non-gendered
type.
There's no
I
gender.
also got that feeling. I love that.
Yeah, and I wanted to, the green hair and the hat, and it could be a man or a woman or.
Yeah, my tree was not gendered either.
No, I could not tell the genitalia of your tree from any single lyric. No, both of you, like I was saying, are absolutely beautiful artists. I think you are a really wonderful pair. And I'm really glad to have shared this evening with you both. Everybody out there in internet land, please save the date for our next live stream event, our next and final, on March 30th at 7:30, featuring musician Rain Hamilton and visual artist Jan Jenkins. Thank you both so much, and we'll see everybody next month. Bye.
Bye.